are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have everybody here on this Thursday, January 18th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that, let's get right into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the announcement that Mike McCarthy is going to be returning to the Cowboys next season. I know there was some speculation on that, but they came out and said that that is indeed what is going to happen. So we'll talk about that in a second. Then in the second part of the show, I'll talk about, the teams that got eliminated in the wild card round and, what they have to address in the offseason. So we'll get into that. Then in the third part of the show, we're going to revisit the past playoff matchups between the Packers and the 49ers. So I'll talk about those as well as we get set for Saturday night when these two teams will play against each other. Obviously Jordan Love will now be the quarterback in that game. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about is third time's a charm for Josh Allen? Because obviously, and I talked about this yesterday, in the regular season, the Bills do well against the Chiefs. They've won, 3 of the last 4 matchups in the regular season. But in the playoffs, they are winless against Patrick Mahomes. However, this time in the playoffs, the game will be played in Buffalo. So I'll talk about that. And, so that's the rundown for the show today. So let's get right into the first topic, which is talking about Mike McCarthy returning to Dallas. Now, obviously, the Cowboys season ended very, I don't know how to put it, I guess abruptly, because I think this loss to the Packers kind of just came out of nowhere, because you had the 7-seed Packers playing against the Cowboys who were the 2 seed. Obviously, it's a new era in Packers football. Okay, so now my camera is just absolutely going crazy, so we're just going to fix that really quick, guys. Hold on one second. I apologize for this. I don't know why this always has to happen. It becomes a common occurrence with this thing. But, it happens, and we'll just have to, we just got to deal with it, so it's fine. And there we go. All right, so we're all good now, I think. But anyways, so... yeah, new era in Packers football. The Cowboys, weak NFC conference, and they couldn't even get out of the first round. I had this team going to the NFC Championship game, but they didn't even come close to that. So, and you thought, the Cowboys defense didn't show up. Dak Prescott was turning the ball over. It just was an ugly game for the Cowboys here in this wild card matchup with the Packers. So you thought that maybe there'd be changes because, Jerry Jones, I guess he said that he was going to evaluate the coach game by game. And you thought really after this matchup that after this loss that Mike McCarthy was going to be gone. And that was not the case. They are bringing him back. And Jerry Jones did say that the Cowboys are close to reaching their ultimate goals. That's what he recently said. Now, let's see. All right, Tom Pelissero has like the full quote, I believe. I believe this team, this is what he said, and this is what Tom Pelissero tweeted. He said, I believe this team is very close and capable of achieving our ultimate goals, and the best step forward for us will be with Mike McCarthy as our head coach. There is a great benefit to continuing the team's process under Mike's leadership as our head coach. Specifically, there are many layers of success that have occurred this season as a result of Mike's approach to leading the team, both with individual players and with our team collectively. Mike has the highest regular season winning percentage of any coach in Cowboys history, and we will dedicate ourselves in partnership with him to translating that into reaching our postseason goals. Certainly, Mike's career has demonstrated postseason success at a high level, and we have great confidence that that can continue. I mean, that's basically most of it, but then what do you say? So this is more of it. He said, further, our loss on Sunday is shared by everyone here, not just Coach McCarthy, our players, our coaches, our front office, myself. There's accountability for our results. I am accountable for our results. The lens we use to view and evaluate Coach McCarthy is holistic. While we're all disappointed with the result on Sunday and with our playoff record, I am 100% supportive of him as our head coach and ability to reach our goals. We will start our process of review and decision-making regarding everything that impacts our team and roster, and while we're not going to address specific players and extensions or free agents at this point, it deserves our deepest review and consideration, and it will get it. So the big thing from that whole thing, that whole quote, is we're close. What are you close to? You got further away. I mean, you were in the divisional round last year. Now you're in the wild card round. I mean, yeah, now you won the division, obviously, so that was at least a step forward with that, but you still took a step back. So you really kind of just are in the same – you took a step back, and, again, you're an early playoff exit, so you're in the same position. Now, there's no question this Cowboys team has a lot of talent. There's no question about it. But ultimately, is this team going to be able to take the next step and get to where they want to be? I don't see it. I don't see it with Mike McCarthy as the head coach. And listen, a lot of that postseason success that he has had, he had Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. So I kind of you kind of got to thank Aaron Rodgers for why Mike McCarthy has the resume that he has. Now again, the Cowboys have had good regular seasons. They've gone 12-5. But it hasn't amounted to anything. You're basically one and done. I mean, last year you got out of the first round, but then you lost to the 49ers. You didn't get to the NFC Championship game. That's where you ultimately want to get to, but they just have not been able to do that. The other thing, too, is, and a lot of people are saying this, is, Mike McCarthy is a guy that Jerry Jones can easily just control. And that is what everybody said about Jason Garrett back in the day when he was still the head coach. If you bring in a Belichick or a Vrabel or a Harbaugh, I don't think you're not going to have that kind of control. So I think that's the other thing, too. And you want to be able to adapt. And that's something that I think Jerry Jones has failed to do, is just he has failed to adapt. And if you don't do that, well, you're kind of going to be doing the same thing over and over again. And that's the other thing, too, is, people talking about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. And believe me, there's been that conversation regarding the Yankees, and that's why, there's similarities between the two teams. And why, a lot of fans don't like the two teams and their fan bases. But the Cowboys are kind of doing the same thing. They need to change something. And they're not doing that. You're going to bring back Mike McCarthy. Now, again, Dallas will probably have a good season again next year. But is it going to amount to anything? Probably not. The conference is going to be even better. I mean, the Packers had a schedule. Look what they did to Dallas. They're going to be even better. They're just getting started. You figure the Eagles, I mean, we'll see what happens. I saw that Nick Sirianni's going to be meeting with ownership, so we'll see what ends up happening there. And you look at, the Rams and the season they had, they're going to be better next year. The 49ers aren't going away. Um, we'll see what happens with Seattle, obviously, now with Pete Carroll not being there anymore. Well, not being the head coach, at least. You figure they'll, they're always competitive. But I Dallas is still better than them. But, you look at the NFC North collectively. I mean, all those teams are going to be better next year. I mean, the NFC South, I mean, Cowboys are still better than those teams. But, yeah, it's the conference is going to be better. And you're not going to have this clear path like you were supposed to have this year. I mean, I really did not see. Nobody saw the Packers doing what they did on Sunday to the Cowboys, with this new era that they've entered. But that's what happened. And you know what? Again, the conference is going to be harder next year. And it was a team effort in that game. There was so many things. I mean, the defense, Dak Prescott turning the ball over. It wasn't just, you can't just point to one specific thing as to why the Cowboys lost. Everything went wrong for them. But doing this, I mean, yeah, you're going to be doing the same thing next year. You're going to play inferior competition. You're going to have a good record, and then you're going to play a good playoff team, and you're going to lose. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. So, and again, I mean, could be proven wrong, and somehow they finally put it together. But I'm going to lean towards, you got to prove it to me. And until they do that, next year's going to go the same way, unfortunately for them. But, we'll see. I mean, Dak Prescott had a really good season. Deron Bland, obviously, with all the pick sixes he had. Micah Parsons is a stud, although kind of disappeared in the playoff game against the Packers. Really didn't hear his name that much. CeeDee Lamb with his season. I mean, they had a lot of players do well this year. They have a lot of talent on this team, but they just cannot take the next step. And Mike McCarthy is not the right guy to do it. I thought Mike McCarthy was a good head coach, but you know what? It just goes to show you that Aaron Rodgers really made his career, because he's not that good. I mean, if you didn't have all this talent, I mean, what would their record be? I mean, you could go back to 2020 when they got ravaged by injuries. I mean, Dak Prescott, when he had that horrific leg injury, in the Giants game that had him, done for the year that season, the Cowboys did not finish with a good record. So it's because of the talent that Mike McCarthy is surrounded by that as to why they, finish with these good records during the season. And also, I mean, this season you look at their schedule, they had a lot of easy games. I mean, you play the Giants twice, the Commanders twice, you played the Jets without Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you could go through all the wins they had at home because they were great at home. And most of those wins came against the Patriots as well. I mean, it was against inferior competition. That's why. And that happens a lot with the Cowboys. That's why people are like, oh, this might be the year. Listen, I kind of thought it was possibly their year to at least get to the NFC Championship game. But and just that they didn't even get out of the first round. So, but now Mike McCarthy's coming back. It's a mistake on their part, but again, Jerry Jones wants to have somebody that he's going to be able to control. So, you got, like I said, you got to be able to adapt. They're not adapting, so it's going to be more of the same, you would imagine, for next year. So, when we get back from we'll actually, bring up the Cowboys in our second segment here. We'll talk about the teams in our next segment. It's a very long segment title here because I really just didn't know what to label it as. But it's so it's going to be off-season changes for eliminated wildcard teams. So what some of these teams have to do, in the off-season to get themselves back to this point, and hopefully for them beyond that for next year. So that is what we'll do when we get back from our first break of the show. So that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're now going to talk about the teams that were eliminated this past weekend and, what they got to do to obviously get themselves back to this point and maybe beyond that for next year. So you got the Cowboys, of course, who we talked about. Obviously, there's not going to be changes when it comes to the head coach. So we just went through that. So you have them. You got the Browns, of course, the Dolphins. Who else? I'm drawing a blank here. The Browns, the Dolphins, the Rams, and the Eagles. Right, that's every team. Oh, the Steelers. Okay, So the Steelers, the Browns, Eagles, Dolphins, Browns. I said the Browns already. You get the idea. So I mean, we'll start off with the Eagles. I mean, I can't believe the collapse that this team had. And you really look at the 49ers game as the game that like really changed everything, that just like broke them, because they were 10-1 and then you end up finishing 11-6. I mean, again, Nick Sirianni's going to be meeting with the ownership this I guess today maybe, or at least like at some point soon, and could be the odd guy out. I mean, I feel like you gotta hold somebody accountable for what happened, with this team. But you had Troy Aikman on the telecast on Monday, saying that the body language of the Eagles just didn't look good. I mean, some of these guys, I guess it seemed like they were just checked out of the season. And it's pretty crazy, what ended up happening with the Eagles. And you saw something similar to Jacksonville too. I mean, well, I don't know if you want to, say that they're like, I mean, they're similar. I mean, you probably look at the Eagles one as probably being worse. But yeah, for the Eagles, I mean, they didn't run the football the same way. Jalen Hurts was turning the ball over more. The defense was just horrible. I mean, like again, I've brought this up. You had guys, with multiple guys with multiple double-digit sack seasons, and this year you just did not have that. But obviously, people talk about the secondary not being the same as it once was, which you lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I mean, James Bradbury. I don't know what happened to him. Obviously they traded for Kevin Byard during the season and didn't really help. But also, the coordinators, they lost Shane Steichen. You lost Jonathan Gannon, and that changed some things. And that just goes to show you, having good coordinators helps. I mean, you go back to, when the Falcons lost Kyle Shanahan when he took the 49ers job. They brought in Steve Sarkisian as the offensive coordinator, and the offense wasn't the same in 2017. Without Shanahan, the team was different, and it's kind of like with the Eagles. Losing both of those coordinators, team's not the same. So you got to look at that. I mean, they had a first-year play caller on the offensive side of the ball, and listen, the Eagles still, at times looked good on offense, but again, they were turning the ball over. They're not running the football the same way. I thought DeAndre Swift was going to, play a huge role in the game on Monday, and he really didn't. Maybe they'd go back and maybe they trade for Miles Sanders and get him back because he had a rough first year in Carolina, but I don't know. And now Jason Kelsey, he didn't make it official, but he's gonna retire. You would imagine. Honestly, it'd be great if as a Giant fan, it wouldn't be great, but to stick it to whoever leaked it, without, because even when you watch the podcast, he didn't officially say like I'm retiring, but he's leaning that way. And he should maybe stick it to whoever leaked it and just say, no, I'm coming back. But, with him not being there, that really affects the offensive line. So, you're going to have to, address that, hole somehow. But yeah, there's a lot of issues in Philly. And obviously, Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson and Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. Those guys are all getting older. Brandon Graham said if he comes back, he's going to be, it's his farewell tour next year. So, we'll see. But they, you got to tweak some stuff. You got to get coordinators. I think is one thing you got to address, and the secondary, you're going to have to address that as well because they got some holes there. I don't think just getting coordinators is going to fix that because the tackling was horrendous. But I don't want to spend too much time on the Eagles. The Cowboys, listen, I mean, guys are just left wide open. I would have said new head coach, but I think that's not happening now with McCarthy coming back. I will say I would say get somebody else to pair with Tony Pollard because the Cowboys did not run the football as well as they did last year. I think you got some free agent running backs out there. Derrick Henry comes to mind, which I really hope he doesn't go there because I don't want to have to deal with him as a Giant fan. But you got to get. I think that's one thing is also get somebody to pair with Tony Pollard because then they could be. Then they can run the football. You had Dak Prescott throwing the ball 60 times, but partly because the Cowboys were down by so much. I think you need to get somebody else in there, to get this team back to being a better, football team when it comes to running the football. That's what I would say for the Cowboys. Other than that, I would say, get a new head coach, but that's not going to happen. Maybe get a new defensive coordinator because I don't know what Dan Quinn was doing, against the Packers. That was horrible. But yeah, so now we'll get to the other teams. I think for the Rams, offensive line, I don't think hurts. Improve that maybe. And then I really the main thing is defense. I think that's what, because you saw the Lions were moving the ball up and down the field in that game on Sunday night. And I said this, the Rams defense is not as loaded as it was when they went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. There's no Von Miller, no Jalen Ramsey. They got to get back to, building up that defense, help out Aaron Donald because Aaron Donald's getting older now. He can't do it all by himself on defense. He can still wreck a game, but it's not as consistently. So I think that's the main thing for the Rams is address the defense. Obviously on the offensive side of the ball, they have a ton of weapons. But I would say defense and the offensive line, that would probably be what I would address if I were the Rams. Again, all these things are easier said than done. So, but that's just one thing I would say. That's what I would say for the Rams at least. For the Browns and for the Dolphins, again, easier said than done. I think they just got to get healthy. Because the Dolphins on defense, they were ravaged by injuries. You were missing, 4 of your linebackers. I think that's what it comes down to. You're also missing Xavier Howard in the game, I believe, against the Chiefs. Again, I don't think it would have made a difference. I think the Chiefs still win. But that's one thing is you got to get your team healthy. And the other thing too is Tua the guy moving forward? And again, actually with both of these teams, because Deshaun Watson hasn't panned out for the Browns, but we've seen what Deshaun Watson can do when he's right. Now, I don't know if he's going to get back to that, but if he can get back to that, the sky's the limit for what this team can do. But for the Dolphins, with Tua, I think you still ride it out with him for now, but I think he's holding you back. What's the alternative? We could sit here and say Tua's not the guy. Okay, well, who are you bringing in? If someone's available that's a better option, yeah, that's different. But, you're not going to go in and draft a rookie quarterback and throw him into the fire and say, this guy is going to give us the better chance to win when you've never seen him play at an NFL level. So you stick with Tua, but, it might not be the guy. And then for the Browns, yeah, they got to get healthy too. Obviously, along with Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb got hurt. You had guys on the offensive line injured, on defense. You know, you got to get healthy for next year because a healthy Browns team, you know, I mean, the defense got shredded by C.J. Stroud. So, you know, might have to, you know, add some players on defense because I don't know what happened there. But again, not to discredit C.J. Stroud, but I mean, that was 45 points. Well, again, Joe Flacco threw 2 pick-sixes, so we can't say all those were on the defense, but still, guys were, guys were wide open on some plays, and you know, um, obviously the Brevin Jordan touchdown. I don't know what the Browns were doing, defense was doing on that play, you know, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a team that's got to get healthy and maybe add some, you know, you got to add some pieces on defense as well, because yeah, I mean they gave up a lot of points on the road this year. I mean, there's that game, and again, go back to the Colts game as well. So yeah, I mean, again, easier said than done. For those teams, they got to get healthy, and then you know the Steelers, kind of the similar thing with them. I mean, I at the quarterback position, I don't know what they're gonna do, because now it's like, is Kenny Pickett the guy? I mean, he didn't play the last, you know, month and a half, basically, or 2 months almost, right? It was something around that timeline. You know, they put in Mason Rudolph. They end up making the playoffs because of, you know, partly because of Mason Rudolph. You know, if you're the Steelers now, what are you going to do? You know, and again, what's the alternative? I mean, are they going to, you know, draft a quarterback? I mean, I guess, you know, but you know, if you want to change a quarterback, I don't know. I mean, Mike Tomlin's coming back, but the Steelers have a good roster. There's no question about it. The Steelers have a good roster, but you know, the quarterback position is kind of what's holding this team back. I mean, they went up against Josh Allen. You know, the Steelers don't have a Josh Allen on their team when it comes to the quarterback position. The Steelers have to get a difference maker at that position, and if they don't, they're kind of going to be in the same position they're in every year. And I talked about this. You get in the playoffs, and you're one and done. That's basically what the Steelers are right now. You know, again, credit to Mike Tomlin for not being able to finish with the losing season, but ultimately you got to take that next step, and they haven't done that. They haven't done that. So, again, a lot of these things are easier said than done, but that's at least, like, you know, on the surface, you know, what some of these teams should do. You know, so with that, well, before we go to our second break of the show, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we'll take a look back at some of the past playoff matchups, the most recent playoff matchups, at least, you know, during my lifetime, between the Packers and the 49ers. And, you know, whether or not this matchup this upcoming weekend could maybe go a little different. So we'll discuss that when we come back from our second break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to take a look back at some of the past playoff matchups between the Packers and the 49ers. And I'll tell you this right now, a lot of these don't favor the Packers. Again, going into Saturday, it's a new era, but it could be more of the same. But I just wanted to take a look back. So we'll go way back to the 2012-2013 divisional playoff matchup. So you had the Packers, who were 11-5 on the regular season, taking on the 11-4-1 49ers. I wonder when that tie come. I don't remember when that tie happened, but so Alex Smith got hurt during the regular season, and that was when they made the change to Colin Kaepernick. Well, Colin Kaepernick stepped in, and then he never, Alex Smith never got his job back, and then he got traded to Kansas City. And then Patrick Mahomes got drafted, and then Alex Smith took him under his wing, and now we have Patrick Mahomes. But yeah, so the 49ers won this game 45-31. Very high-scoring game. Kaepernick actually threw a pick six in this game to Sam Shields. So the Packers went up, 7-0, but yeah, it went back and forth for a while, but then, the 49ers, they pulled away. And, this was kind of one of those games where it's like, Aaron Rodgers, your defense is just not helping you out in these playoffs. But, Rodgers, 257 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and a pick. He had a 82.4 QBR and a 91.5 quarterback rating. DeJuan Harris was their leading rusher in this game. Remember him? James Jones was their leading receiver. He had a touchdown. Greg Jennings had a touchdown. But Colin Kaepernick was the star of this game. 17-31, 263 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Obviously was the pick six. He had a 95.6 QBR and a 91.2 quarterback rating. But the big thing was, the 49ers, they ran the ball for 323 yards in this game. Kaepernick had 181 yards rushing and 2 rushing touchdowns. Frank Gore had 23 carries for 119 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, that's why the 49ers won this game, was because of their running game. Michael Crabtree, 9 receptions for 119 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, it's just ugly game for the Packers defense, but believe me, it gets worse. You thought that was bad. Well, there's an NFC Championship game where the 49ers continue to run the ball against the Packers. So, yeah, you had this game. Then we'll go now to a year later. This was the 2013-2014 wildcard game. Wildcard game. This was now at Lambeau Field, because that was at Candlestick. The 49ers won that game 23-20. Lower scoring game now. Rodgers, that was the year he broke one of his collarbones. He came back and he had that, that classic, Week 17 finale against the Bears that won them the NFC North. In this game, Kaepernick's stats aren't as, they don't stand out as much. He still had 98 yards rushing in the game, a couple of big runs in the game, 16-20 for 227 yards, a touchdown and a pick, quarterback rating or QBR of 88, and actually had a quarterback rating of 56.3. Yeah, so that wasn't good. Crabtree, leading receiver again, 125 yards receiving. And then on the Packers side, Rodgers, 17-26, 177 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 66.9 QBR, quarterback rating of 52.1. Eddie Lacy was their leading rusher at 81 yards, rushing on the ground. Jordy Nelson was their leading receiver. That's my guy, 7 receptions for 62 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, not a good offensive showing for the Packers in this game. Vernon Davis had a touchdown, I remember, in this game. Actually did watch the highlights for it the other day because they posted it, to get you hyped up for the matchup on Saturday. So yeah, that was the other matchup there. So now the next one now came in 2019, the 2019-2020 season, and that was the NFC Championship game. Now, we talked about Kaepernick and what he was able to do against that defense on the ground and the Niners running game in general. Well, then you also had Raheem Mostert, who ran for 220 yards in this game. So actually the 49ers didn't run for as many yards. They had 285 yards as opposed to the over 300 yards that they had in the divisional round. But yeah, Mostert, 29 carries, 220 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback in this game. Only threw 8 passes. 6 of 8, 77 yards, 53.7 QBR, but a QB rating of 104.7. But yeah, that's because he didn't throw the ball. Deebo Samuel was their leading receiver. He had 2 receptions for 46 yards. But yeah, the running game, once again, the run defense for the Packers just had no answers. No answers for Raheem Mostert. Rodgers on the day went 31 of 39, 326 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He had a QBR of 23.3 and a quarterback rating of 97.2. And then you had Aaron Jones, who was their leading rusher, 12 for 56 and a touchdown. Devontae Adams was their leading receiver. He had 9 receptions for 138 yards. But yeah, I mean, this game got ugly early. I think it was like 20. I think this was like 27-0 at one point, right? Yeah, it was 27-0 at the half. Yeah, I mean, the Packers, not that, I mean, I guess they made it somewhat interesting when it was 34-20 with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. But it just, the Packers, I really did not think they were going to win this game. The game I did think they were going to win, even though I thought it was going to be tough, was the divisional round when the Packers were the 1 seed. And the 49ers obviously upset the Cowboys the week before that. Niners were coming in at 10-7. Packers obviously were 13-4. And the 49ers won the game without scoring an offensive touchdown. The final score in that game was 13-10. Jimmy Garoppolo, 11-19, 131 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. Quarterback rating of 57.1, a QBR of 14.7. Elijah Mitchell was their leading rusher. He had 53 yards on the ground. George Kittle was their leading receiver with 63 yards receiving. And then for the Packers, Rodgers went 20-29, 225 yards, no touchdown, no interceptions, a quarterback rating of 91.9 and a QBR of 22.6. Aaron Jones had 41 yards on the ground. A.J. Dillon had a rushing touchdown in this game. Yeah, this was interesting, though. So Rodgers only threw to 4 players. Or, no. He only, that was more than 4. But, like, only 3 people had receptions in the game. Allen Lazard had 1 reception for 6 yards. Devontae Adams had 9 for 90. And Aaron Jones had 9 for 129. And it looked like the Packers were going to dominate this game because they went right down the field on their first drive. And A.J. Dillon scores that touchdown, and you thought, oh, man, this game's going to be a blowout. And then they were driving again, and then Mercedes Lewis fumbled, and that kind of changed the momentum of the game. And then, you had the block punt late in the game. Ufanga scores the touchdown on that, and the game's tied. And everybody talks about on that third down play, Rodgers just throws it to Devontae Adams, and he had Allen Lazard wide open, and then the 49ers took it down the field, and Robbie Gould kicked the game-winning field goal, and the Niners beat the Packers again in the playoffs. So yeah, the past hasn't been too kind to the Packers when it comes to the 49ers. And listen, the Packers' run defense has been a problem. They had to deal with Kaepernick and Frank Gore and then Raheem Mostert. Well, guess what you got to deal with now? Christian McCaffrey. So good luck with that. And also Deebo Samuel, of course, because he can run the football as well. Now, again, the Packers played a very good game against the Cowboys. There's no question about it. Their defense played well. They forced turnovers. They got to the quarterback. They had a great game plan for that game. But it's going to be completely different now when you're playing the 49ers. They're rested, and they are not going to take the Packers lightly in this game. Because you could argue that the Cowboys might have did that with the Packers this past week. The 49ers are not going to do that. They are going to be prepared for this game. Now, we've seen some games this year where the 49ers defense has struggled. We have seen that. and Jordan Love, he's going to spread the ball around. With the divisional round that I just talked about when the Packers were the 1 seed, Rodgers was just force feeding to Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones. Jordan Love I think, is going to spread the ball around. You got so many of these young receivers that can make plays. I mean, Jaden Reed, who was playing really well, he didn't do anything in the game against the Cowboys. So the issue for me too also is the Packers are going to struggle to run the football. They're not going to be able to run the football like I don't think Aaron Jones is going to have the game like he did against the Cowboys against the 49ers. I don't think it's going to happen. So the Jordan Love is going to have to make more plays in this game. They're going to have to throw it more. And again, we've seen the 49ers back end struggle, against the Vikings, against the Bengals when Joe Burrow was healthy. They've had some problems. So if the offensive line can hold up for Jordan Love and give him time to throw, you know what? I think the Packers are going to put up a better fight in this game than I think most people think. And, people are saying, hey, it's prisoner of the moment because they just, beat the Cowboys the way they did. But I don't know. Jordan Love's been playing good football for a while now. And this is going to be a big test for him. And listen, again, I mean, the Packers, they shouldn't even be here. They're playing with house money right now. So, yeah, if they go out and get destroyed, then they get destroyed. But the 49ers have been too good this year. They've had some struggles, and obviously against the Ravens, that was bad. That was a bad loss too. But you know what? This team is very good. This is one of the best teams in the NFL, the best team in the NFC by far. It's not even close, especially with what And I said, what the top, 3 teams were, or at least the top teams were in the NFC, and the Cowboys, they were like number 2, but. You know what? I mean, the 49ers, after what happened this past week, it's not even close. They are the best team in the NFC by far. And I don't want to disrespect the Lions because they're still there, but you know what? Let's see if they match up against each other in the championship game. But the 49ers, it's gonna be a tough task for the Packers. I mean, you just beat the 2-seeded Cowboys. It doesn't get any easier because now you're playing the 49ers. And in the past, Packers have struggled to stop the run. And it doesn't get any easier now because now you got to deal with Christian McCaffrey. Deebo Samuel's, they're going to have some running plays for him. And on top of that, I mean, Ayuk and George Kittle, there's a ton of weapons on this offense. And then for the Packers offense going up against the Niners defense, are they going to be able to hold up and protect Jordan Love? Jordan Love can move around, so it's not like he's going to be, sitting back there and I don't know what that was. It's not like he's going to be just sitting back there and he can't move and they're going to, get to him. And you know what? When the pressure was coming, he still stood tall in that pocket and he let it rip. And made some great throws in the game against the Cowboys. So, we'll see what happens. I mean, we're going to preview this game tomorrow, and I'll give you my my picks for it. I think this game will be. I think this game's going to be better than people think. But then again, it does make me nervous when Kyle Shanahan said he started preparing for the Packers. When it was 27-0. So, we'll see. But we're going to take our now final break of the show, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about his third time's a charm for Josh Allen because now he's playing Patrick Mahomes once again in the playoffs, and we'll discuss that when we come back. Obviously, the Bills lost the previous 2 matchups against the Chiefs in the playoffs, so we'll talk about, is this the time now for Josh Allen and the Bills to get over that hump and finally beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. So, for one final time on the show today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about Josh Allen and his third time's a charm. Is this the game that the Bills finally beat the Chiefs? Now, I'm not going to say, whether or not that's going to happen. I'm going to talk about whether it could happen, because obviously I want to save that for tomorrow. Because for tomorrow, with it being 4 games, we're literally just going to preview each game, in its own segment. So, like the last segment, I kind of just want to go, even though it's just, 2 playoff matchups, but I want to go through the previous 2 matchups when these teams, played each other in the playoffs. So, obviously, you had the AFC Championship game that was back during the COVID season. Josh Allen in that game went 28 of 48, 287 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. He had a 52 QBR and an 80.8 quarterback rating. He was their leading rusher at 88 yards on the ground. Cole Beasley actually was their leading receiver in this game. I did not know that. TJ Yeldon was there on the team as well. 4 receptions for 41 yards. That's a throwback name. Dawson Knox had a touchdown. Isaiah McKenzie had a touchdown. But yeah, the Bills lost that game 38-24. And then on the Chiefs side, Patrick Mahomes had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, a QBR of 94.3, and a quarterback rating of 127.6. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 325 yards passing. Darrell Williams was actually their leading rusher. He had 52 yards rushing and a touchdown. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a rushing touchdown. Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce had big games. Tyreek Hill had 172 receiving yards. Travis Kelce had 13 receptions for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mecole Hardman had a touchdown in the game. But yeah, the Chiefs won that 38-24. And yeah, they went on to lose the Super Bowl that year to the Bucs. And then, of course, you had the classic AFC divisional round from a couple years ago. The year after that, 42-36 was the final score in this game. Josh Allen finished 27-37, 329 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 136 quarterback rating, and a 92.1 QBR. Was their leading rusher again for he had 68 yards rushing on the ground. And Gabe Davis, that was his big playoff performance that really raised his fantasy stock because everybody was all over Gabe Davis the following year, including myself. I didn't realize that Gabe Davis didn't play in the game against, or that he was ruled out against the Steelers. I didn't realize that. Not that it really mattered, but yeah, so Gabe Davis had 8 receptions for 201 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Stephon Diggs only had 3 receptions for 7 yards. So he really didn't do anything in this game. Josh Allen did fumble, but it wasn't a fumble loss. He recovered it. And then for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes went 33 of 44, 378 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, a 96.9 QBR, and a 123 quarterback rating. And Patrick Mahomes actually was the leading rusher for the Chiefs. He had 7 carries for 69 yards and a touchdown. Tyreek Hill had 11 receptions for 150 yards and a touchdown. Travis Kelce had 8 for 96 and a touchdown. What a game this was. And obviously, with that game, we all remember, the Bills scored the go-ahead touchdown with 13 seconds left. And you thought the game was over. But the Chiefs had all 3 of their timeouts. And it was interesting because I saw they posted it on I saw it on Instagram, I believe, or TikTok. It was on social media. It was one of the 2. The audio of Travis Kelce, because he told Tyreek Hill what he should run on the first play, because the Bills were playing off and Tyreek Hill got that big chunk to start the drive. They called a timeout, and then Kelce said that if they run the same defense, that seam's going to be open down the middle. And, when they went up to the line, Mahomes saw it and told Kelce to run that route. And Kelce went right down that seam. Mahomes threw it to him. They got into field goal range. Butker kicked the game-tying field goal. Went into overtime. The Chiefs got the ball first. And they went right down the field, scored the touchdown. Travis Kelce caught the game-winning touchdown, and that was the game. And Josh Allen did not see the ball, and that's why there was all that, controversy over the overtime rules, and they did change them. Yeah, and it was because of that game. But I mean, what else is Josh Allen supposed to do? I mean, that was an unbelievable game that he played. But the Bills fell a little bit short. And the Chiefs ended up winning the game. Of course, they ended up losing to the Bengals. The following week. That game went to overtime as well. And the Chiefs did get the ball, but Patrick Mahomes then threw a pick, and then they got into field goal range, and Evan McPherson kicked the game-winning field goal, and that was it. All right, so now is third time's a charm here for Josh Allen. Can they finally get over the hump and beat the Chiefs in the playoffs? Now, again, Patrick Mahomes has never played in a road playoff game, not counting the Super Bowls, so it's going to be different. It's going to be different, and they did play in the regular season in Buffalo during the COVID season, but again, no fans for this game. Bills Mafia is going to be going crazy for this game. So the Bills at least have their fans to back them up here in this spot, in this postseason game. And the other thing, too, is, and this didn't happen against the Steelers, Josh Allen got to play a turnover-free game as well. And you know what? He played pretty much a turnover-free game in the last playoff matchup. But, again, they still lost. That's another thing, too. But this is a different Chiefs team. There's no Tyreek Hill in this game. Obviously, Travis Kelce is a little compromised. He's been a little banged up this year. The receivers have had their drop problems. Rashee Rice has really started to, become that number one wide receiver for this team. Isaiah Pacheco has run the ball well for them. So the Chiefs have a new identity on offense. It's not the same, it's not the same Chiefs offense. But again, this is an offense you still got to respect because of who's running the offense. Obviously when you got Mahomes and you got Kelce there, you still got to respect them. And they still got some guys on, again, like I said, Pacheco, Rashee Rice, they've been making plays. So, and the Bills' defense is banged up. It's not going to be. I don't think they're going to go up 21-0 to start the game against the Chiefs. It's not going to happen because the Chiefs' defense. That's the bigger story this year. Is the Chiefs' defense has played really well. So I think this is going to be a close, tight game. It's probably going to come down to the end. Really looking forward to it, of course. I'm not going to say, who's going to win this game right now. But, yeah, I mean, it's third time's a charm. You lost the previous two matchups against them in Arrowhead, and now you're at home for this game. Like I said, you got Bills Mafia behind you, so that helps you out. And you just got to not turn the ball over as well. And the Bills' defense has got to force some stops. I'm really curious to see how it's going to go. I don't really know where I mean, obviously I did my bracket already, so if you go back and watch that, how I had the playoffs shaping out. But that doesn't mean I can't change my picks. I mean, also, again, from a fan perspective, it'd be nice to see a different team. Maybe see the Bills move on and, maybe get to the Super Bowl. Because obviously the Chiefs won last year. I know my parents are definitely saying that. I know my mom especially be like, oh, you see a new team. We see the Chiefs every year. I mean, listen, I with the way the playoffs are right now, I'm fine with whoever gets to the Super Bowl and that we get a good game. Yeah, I mean, this game is going to be competitive. I'm not going to say this game is going to be a blowout, one way or the other. This game is going to come down to, who's going to have the ball last. Now, I don't think it's going to be a 42-36 game. No, it will not be that game. It will not be that game. And if it is, well, I'll take it. I'll take another one of those. That's fine. Because a lot of people say that's the best playoff game ever. Is that game? Because the amount of scoring. I mean, you had Gabe Davis scoring a touchdown on 4th and 13. Then you had Tyreek Hill. He scored the touchdown. Then Gabe Davis scored another touchdown. And then the Chiefs, with 13 seconds left, get in the field goal range. Butker kicks the field goal. They go to overtime. They go right down the field. Kelce scores the touchdown. And that's the game. I mean, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with another OT game like that. Um, but yeah, I mean this is a legacy game for Josh Allen. Because if you could do that, that just gets that monkey off your back. That really does. If you're able to finally beat this team in the postseason. And the Bills, they've been in playoff mode really since the game against the Chiefs that they played way back. When Kadarius Toney lined up off sides. So they've been in playoff mode ever since they played the Chiefs. Now the Chiefs, they're probably like, we lost to this team because when that happened, we want to get revenge for that. So there's also that as well, and it's weird because the Bills have kind of owned the Chiefs in the regular season, but the Chiefs have owned them in the postseason. So, and now we're going to see, and when the Chiefs did beat them, that was in Buffalo and there were no fans. So now we're going to see them in a playoff game in Buffalo with fans. Patrick Mahomes, again, first road playoff game. I mean, I'm really excited. Another Mahomes-Allen matchup. This is like the next, I mean, the big three, like when Burrow's healthy, it's like between those three. And obviously, I don't really want to disrespect Lamar Jackson, what he's been able to do, because, the first couple of years, we were talking about Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson, couldn't beat the Chiefs, and then they finally did in 2021 in week 2. Clyde Edwards-Helaire fumbled in that game. The Ravens got the ball, and then they were in their own territory on 4th down, and they went for it. Lamar Jackson picked up the first down, and they won. I think they won by a point, and Lamar Jackson finally beat the Chiefs. And since then, the Chiefs haven't played the Ravens. So, we could see that in the championship game, but yeah, it's been a little bit since the last time we saw Mahomes and Lamar Jackson play against each other. So maybe we see that in the AFC Championship game. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are talking about it being the Mahomes-Allen or Mahomes-Burrow being the next Manning Brady. I mean, I feel like, well, actually, I don't even know, because they've played each other the same amount of times. Like Mahomes has played Burrow twice in the playoffs. He's played Josh Allen twice in the playoffs, but now it's third time. So, yeah. Again, the NFL's in good hands with the quarterbacks we got. I mean, the quarterbacks in the AFC side, I mean, we're in good hands. We really are. So, but let me know what you guys think. Is this the game that Josh Allen finally gets over that hump and beats Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs? Let me know. That's basically it with the show for today. There's going to be no baseball show tomorrow. So what we're doing now is it's going to be now every other Friday. We kind of reached a point in the offseason where there's just really nothing going on. I mean, you had a bunch of teams, sign a bunch of international players. But I mean, when I looked at the Hot Stove app, well, on the MLB at Bat app, and went to the Hot Stove page, and there's just nothing yesterday. So we will that'll be next Friday. So it'll be every other Friday. But yeah, the football show obviously will be tomorrow. We'll preview all the games. I'll give you my picks. And yeah, that'll be it. So with that is all the time that we have for today. I thank you guys for watching. Again, make sure to tune in tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.